Keeping the Navy supplied at sea has been the role of the Royal Fleet Auxiliary since the turn of the century. And with the support of ground operations now a major part of the Navy's post-Cold War role, its ships and civilian crews see service in every part of the world. Fort Victoria, displacing over 32,000 tons, carries a huge range of food, fuel and ammunition for warships which may have to spend months at sea, particularly if deployed on operations. So they rely on being able to call in supplies as and when they need them. The drills are well practiced.
You know what's going to happen, or you think you can predict what's going to happen. You know when your shelves are getting low. And for example, with food, if you take the analogy of the family are all coming around on Sunday, then you'll go shopping on Friday to make sure you're ready for them. And so when our stocks get a bit low, in case we're required to do something, in case we're required to be detached, and the Commander Task Group knows what he's planning for ships, then he'll send ships in to make sure they're topped up. So you're not embarrassed by having a ship which has got low on food, no ammunition when they only arrive, or not enough fuel to do what you want to do.
Often this resupply would be carried out under cover of darkness or when the threat of enemy action was low, not least because there's little a warship can do in the way of fighting when it's alongside a tanker. On this occasion, the ship being supplied, HMS Gloucester, needs another Sea Dart missile. This particular rig hasn't been tried before, so a test load is sent across first to make sure it can be done. The RFA is commanded by a master mariner, who despite being a civilian is also a commodore, and his ships fly the blue ensign superimposed with an anchor.
RFAs are registered merchant ships. My people are UK registered seamen. We fly the blue ensign to indicate that we are part of the government service, but being UK registered ships, then I have freedom of access to any port in the world as a UK registered ship. I am entitled to arm my ships for defensive purposes only.
Coming into Devonport, however, Fort George's Captain Carew has more immediate problems.
Now we've got a chap who's just gone to the Tokyo School of Kamikaze Yacht Pilots who wants to get in the way. And apart from that, we should be all right.
All the career courses for RFA officers and ratings, indeed, they follow the normal Merchant Navy career course requirements. But we have an overlay of specific naval training in order to teach them how to fire the guns, and indeed another particular area is in terms of firefighting and damage control. Obviously, we need to defend our ships much more strongly than the average merchant ship.
Stand by, fore and aft.
We're all of one, we're all a brotherhood of the sea. And I feel unique. I don't feel, I'm from a Merchant Navy background. Our Commodore in the Naval Bulletin 2 years ago, or a year ago, said we come from a Merchant Navy ethos. But I would be out of place on a Merchant Navy ship. I would have to go back to my basics to do what I've trained to do, what my certificates, you know, I have a master's certificate and I've learned how to do things that way. The same thing if you've got a Merchant Navy officer on here, and actually put him on the bridge and said, right, you're on watch, he'd be fine. And if we got him today and put him in the ops room, he would be in the same position. Well, he would have to learn how to run the ops room.
Opposition steward, FRET 1 in red, based on new fast-moving contacts, 220 Zulu Zulu, 35 miles, closing 4 speed fast. FRET 1 in red.
Nose bags up, chaps.
In the ship's ops room, the crew practice dealing with an air attack.
Opposition steward, aircraft have been intercepted by CAP and currently engaging. First aircraft is splashed. Second aircraft now in through the force and continue to close now 225 at 20 miles.
Prior to the Falklands, RFAs were fitted to receive armament, close caliber guns, but they were always stowed below, and we suddenly recognised after the Falklands that we needed slightly better access to them. And so in particular as a result of the Falklands campaign, we have gone for a policy of arming ships with small caliber guns and training the people to man them.
We were originally going to be fitted with vertically launched missiles, but that hasn't come about with the demise of the Soviet, well, the finishing of the Soviets. It wasn't considered we need them anymore, so we're fitted for but not with. And we will be getting in the next refit the phalanx system, one forward and one aft, to defend ourselves.
The rationalisation in the three services has meant that we can no longer afford to defend an RFA with 2 or 3 warships. We have to be able to a certain extent defend ourselves, and a lot of the military training in the RFA that has taken place since the Falkland conflict has been to that end.
Fort George, commissioned in 1993, is one of the latest additions to the RFA fleet. And here we see something else that marks this ship out as being very different from other ships in the Merchant Navy: the ability to wash itself down in the event it comes under a nuclear, biological or chemical warfare attack. Displacing over 32,000 tons, she is considerably bigger than a British aircraft carrier, which gives some idea of the storage capacity these ships have. This was the first ship to introduce the one-stop concept, meaning she can carry fuel and other liquids, including fresh water supplies, as well as ammunition and dry stores. She also provides helicopter maintenance facilities. The space in this new class of ship is enormous, the lifts dropping down and down through 5 decks and deep into the heart of the storage holds. These huge holds store everything the fleet might need at sea. There are over 23,000 separate items here. The ammunition is stored below the waterline in chilled and refrigerated holes. There's the food, and here spares in this drawer, fuses, and over here huge great gearbox for a Sea King helicopter. The men who work down here are all civilians with experience of stores and warehouses on land, and sorting this lot out was quite a job.
All the items of cargo we carry for reissue to naval ships have to be accessible instantly. So in this store we have had to provide 8, 9 alleyways to allow the staff to gain access. First of all, I obtained a plan from the shipbuilder, Swan Hunter, and then measured all the holds, and then assessed the cargo. Which concept of the thing, it's very much a floating depot. So we draw guys from all kinds of store depots ashore, and they're chosen by degree of expertise, what they are used to doing in a depot. And we bring them here and try and weld them into a team.
So despite the fact that you are actually civilians, you really are very much part of the Royal Navy?
Yeah, well, certainly we integrate as best we can with the Royal Fleet Auxiliary in these ships. You know, the Navy still remains the customer on the warship. There are very few, if any of us, on warships, but on these Royal Fleet Auxiliaries, the stores support ships and these auxiliary oil replenishments, then we do have to do all the things they do in terms of firefight and damage control. When we go to action stations, you know, we even have on some of our ships chaps firing guns.
So, a curious mixture of civilian and naval life within the Royal Fleet Auxiliary, which can lead to some confusion.
Many people are under the misapprehension that an RFA is a floating warehouse. Of course it is, but it isn't just that. Our ships vary greatly from logistics ships which can carry out beach landings to this ship, the Fort George, which can travel worldwide in support of a multi-capable task force, carrying out such operations as ASW, anti-submarine warfare operations with our embarked aircraft, special forces operations, relief and disaster operations, and indeed the normal Royal Naval operations we would carry out, such as replenishment at sea.
And so to a RAS, replenishment at sea, which is ultimately what the Royal Fleet Auxiliary is all about. Ahead of us, you can see Black Rover, Royal Fleet Auxiliary ship, And this is to be what they call a RAS-L. The L stands for liquid. In this case, that means fuel. Now, it's quite a complicated bit of seamanship, getting this big ship alongside that one to shoot the lines across. It'll take a little bit of time. A deck working party on the aircraft carrier HMS Invincible, heading towards deployment in the Adriatic, gets ready to join up with Black Rover, a small fleet tanker. The first part of the drill is to fire a line across. As well as fuel, the purpose of today's replenishment, the Rover-class tanker also carries fresh water and a limited supply of dry cargo and refrigerated stores.
Under the deck station. It's got no choice in this. We have one you read to give you guys either side of it. It's good first of all taking it off, they've got to do that.
The hose for the diesel fuel comes snaking across.
Keep it going, put it on. On goals!
Grab through the gap there.
Pumping diesel?
Pumping diesel.
Yeah.
Keep leaving price now forward of after the rig with AB. I want to know from the stokers, as soon as fuel's coming in, it's coming through.
Far away to the north, the positions are reversed as the giant Fort Victoria dwarfs the Type 22 frigate HMS Brazen. All this requires a high degree of seamanship.
It's tricky, first of all, from ship handling because you have a tanker which may be 30,000 tons, which is quite a phenomenal displacement compared with the 4,500 tons of destroyer alongside it. So you have to break through the pressure waves. You have to make sure you get alongside the right bit of the ship to get the rigs opposite, because you're at that point about 100 feet apart, which is quite tricky with two large bits of metal moving through the water. And you don't always line up with bow to bow or stern to stern. For example, if we replenish midships, it might be on a forward rig of the tanker, so our bow might be ahead of the tanker, yet our stern is only halfway down, so our stern's being sucked in, our bow's being pushed out, and then we have to ride on the bow wave perhaps of the tanker. So it makes it quite difficult to stay 100 feet off when you only have a few feet forwards or backwards to sit there and get the rigs opposite.
And that's in fine weather?
That's in fine weather. In rough weather it's quite tricky, quite exciting at times.
Another advantage is the capability for vertical replenishment. For instance, if the flight deck is very busy, a fuel hose can be passed up so a helicopter can refuel without landing.
In the past, we had ships that carried fuel, ships that carried ammunition, and then ships carried ammunition in stores. Now we are one-stop ship. We do the whole bang shoot, and we can carry up to 5 helicopters if necessary, which is very quick. And of course, you can fly a helicopter. There are times when you don't want to bring the ship to the store ship, you can fly the helicopter. And there are occasions with a carrier we'll be doing both. You'd be alongside taking fuel, stores, and you'd be picking the stuff up from the 2 ships like that, and it's just dump, dump, dump very quick. And the Sea King is a very versatile piece of kit.
The RFA's aviation facilities are second only to those of dedicated aircraft carriers, and the civilian crews get a substantial amount of naval training. With their large hangars, capable of holding up to 5 of the new Merlin helicopters, the role of the RFA is changing to quite a degree.
The RFA, in the days that I joined, was very much the means of taking the commodity from the warehouse to the customer. Since then, it's evolved to such an extent that we provide much more aviation facilities for the anti-submarine helicopters in order that they can operate from a forward operating base. We have taken on the aviation training platform role for the Royal Navy, an essential aspect of training, obviously, to make sure that the pilots and the observers are confident in operating from a seaborne platform. We've taken on a forward repair ship which hitherto we didn't have, providing or capable of providing essential sort of on-the-spot repairs to warships in different parts of the world, or in any part of the world.
The Royal Navy is not equipped today to go out and do its business without the Royal Fleet Auxiliary. We don't have the bases all over the world anymore. And we're also viewed by Cinque Fleet as a force multiplier. Our ships don't just carry stores. Each one of them can do something else.
I think we're heading more towards contingent out-of-area operations, as we can witness with operations in the Adriatic at the moment. And I think we're seeing ships, sort of singleton operations happening now more than the group activities of the past. Having said that, of course, we are still exercising group activities, as I'm sure you've witnessed in the past with things like joint maritime exercises.
On such an exercise, the landing craft Ardennes comes slowly towards the beach. It's one of two in this amphibious warfare class, and it's part of an amphibious task force which has all the command and control facilities to conduct the highly complex business of landing a field force in fighting order. It's ships like these which make the final link between sea and land, carrying transport, equipment, ammunition and supplies. On this occasion, it brings senior naval officers from a number of NATO countries to see for themselves how the exercise is progressing.
The emphasis now, I think, is placed much more on amphibiosity, and of course I run 5 landing ships logistic, which over the years, particularly in the last 5 or 6 years, have been in the forefront of amphibious activity. Indeed, not only do I do that, but they provide some form of support to the Army in freighting cargoes, mainly across to the continent. I've actually got one ship at the moment supporting United Nations in Angola.
We've got ships in the Gulf, we've got ships out in the West Indies, we've got ships in the Persian Gulf, in the Adriatic. It's reactive all the time. Who's going to start something next? We go out with NATO, we go out with the Western European Union, we go and support United Nations, but it's sometimes we can go out and face a relatively sophisticated enemy. Sometimes he could be very third world, but some of their kit now, they're buying some good second-hand gear from the Soviets. They may not be what we would call quite as swept up, but I'd put it this way: a man can kill you with a club if he gets close enough, just as easy as he can kill you with a bullet a bit further away. We have to be very reactive these days.
North of Scotland, the small fishing fleet ignores all signals to move from the path of 2 warships replenishing at sea. This immediately has the full attention of the destroyer's captain.
Can you just explain the problem with the fishermen, if you like? Well, at the moment we're going through a fishing fleet, and under the rules of the road by which we govern our behaviour on the seas, they're supposed to give way to us because we're replenishing, and we're considerably impeded while we're doing this, so they really should give way. At the moment, as you can see around us, there's a large number of fishing boats who are more intent on having a look at us than actually keeping out of our way.
And are you likely to go through their nets or what? What happens?
I don't think so. We've been fairly careful, as you can see, and these chaps here are going to present a bit of a difficulty.
So, navigator,
yeah.
The captain of Fort Victoria is a bit concerned about the fishing boat. He'd like to come 50 degrees to starboard in 5 degree steps, sir.
15.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, fine.
It's the captain of the first one, sir. Weight execution is for replace units to all the courses to starboard to 275 in 5 degree steps.
Yep, ready.
Officers on the Fort Victoria are also keeping a close eye on this little drama. The fishing fleet stubbornly remains where it is, and it's the big ships, linked together by cable, which have very gradually to change course.
Steer 266.
266.
Steer 267.
267.
Steer 268.
268.
When you come back to 265. Yeah.
We rather like to think of ourselves as unique, and we are unique. In fact, we're the only nation that has an RFA. Having said that, I'm now going to contradict myself. The Americans have now started, when they stopped their conscription, some of their ships are now going into the front line, manned by their merchant seamen. The difference is there that the helicopters would be, none of that, they don't have anything to do with the helicopters. They would have, if they're fitted for but not with self-defense armament, their communications are all run by the US Navy, whereas we do the whole lot ourselves.
I think we're seeing both the Navy and the RFA become a lot leaner, both in terms of the number of platforms, but also in terms of the manpower that we employ in the ships. So we are becoming a lot leaner, we're becoming more efficient in the way in which we do our business.
Fort Victoria and Gloucester are now ready to make the transfer of the Sea Dart. It all calls for very quick reactions.
So the message is not getting across. We need to detension rapidly. Thank you.
And so, leaving the fishing fleet safely to one side, the Sea Dart missile can finally be swung across, the two ships keeping station side by side.
We're looking at having 18 ships well into the next century. And whilst we have that number of ships, we are cost effective. We're good at our job. If we stop being good at our job, the Royal Navy are going to say, look, I'm the customer. If you can't do the job, I'll do it for you. But that's not going to happen while there are people like, you've seen the young officers and ratings we've got on this ship. You know, I'm going to retire shortly, but you saw it in the ops room, you saw those young men. And while we've got people like that, no one's going to say, you can't produce what we want, because we'll produce it. Make no mistake about that.
During a long and distinguished history of replenishing warships at sea, and more lately supporting fighting forces on land, the Royal Fleet Auxiliary has earned many battle honours. Almost the entire flotilla was deployed in support of British forces during the Falklands campaign, where one ship was lost and another badly damaged. Since then, they've contributed to operations in Angola and the former Yugoslavia. And all this with a fleet manned by just over 2,000 civilian officers and ratings.